It's Goldman Diaries. I found out my husband was cheating on me 2 days before Thanksgiving, and the proof was sitting in my mailbox, waiting for me like a ticking bomb. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't even sealed. Just a plain cream-colored card tucked between the bills and Black Friday ads. At first, I thought it was junk mail, until I saw the handwriting. The way my name was nowhere on it. I slid the card open right there, on the porch, grocery bags cutting into my fingers. To Nick, thank you for the most beautiful year of my life. I can't wait for forever with you. Signed, Liza. No explanation. No way to misread it. A love letter. To my husband. From a woman I had never heard of. For a second, the world tilted sideways. The weight of the groceries. The icy November wind. The tiny crackle of dead leaves under my feet. It all blurred into background noise. I stood there, frozen, while the front door, our front door, mocked me with its fall wreath and welcome sign. Inside, the house was already decorated for Thanksgiving. A pumpkin centerpiece on the table. Cinnamon candles burning in the kitchen. Our son's crayon drawings taped to the fridge, handprint turkeys, and scribbled, "I'm thankful for my family." Family. I clutched the card so tightly it crumpled in my hand. Was this what Nick had been doing during his late nights at work? Was this why he started locking his phone? Why he'd flinch when I walked into the room? A year. An entire year of my life was a lie. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash something, tear down the stupid decorations, call him at the office and demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I walked inside like nothing had happened. Set the groceries on the counter. Smoothed out the card and hid it in the back of the junk drawer. Because I knew I couldn't confront him yet. Not without a plan. Not without witnesses. Thanksgiving was in 2 days. The house would be full of family. His parents. My sister. Our son. Our friends. And now, apparently, his mistress. I could feel it coming. Like a storm building on the horizon. Nick wasn't just lying to me. He was about to lie to everyone we loved. And this year, Thanksgiving wasn't going to end with pie and leftovers. It was going to end with the truth. Because I wasn't just planning a dinner anymore. I was planning his destruction. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed beside Nick, listening to the slow, even sound of his breathing, feeling the betrayal like a weight on my chest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the words again. Thank you for the most beautiful year of my life. How many nights had he come home to me, kissed me, held our son, sat at our table, after being with her? By morning, I had a plan. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. Not yet. I needed proof. Real proof. Something that couldn't be explained away. While Nick showered, I took his phone off the nightstand. My hand shook so badly I could barely type in the passcode, his birthday. Easy. But the phone didn't unlock. Wrong code. I tried again, our son's birthday. Wrong. The cold reality hit me harder than the rejection screen. Nick had changed his password. He never changed his password. I stared at the phone, my mind racing. He must have locked it months ago. Long enough to make sure I wouldn't find anything. Long enough to build a new life behind my back. I heard the shower shut off and shoved the phone back just in time. He walked out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, whistling like he didn't have a care in the world. Morning, he said, smiling that easy, familiar smile. The smile that once made me feel safe. I smiled back. Pretended. Because I had to. Because if he knew what I knew, if he even suspected, I would lose my only advantage. The rest of the morning, I went through the motions. Packing lunches. Answering emails. Planning the Thanksgiving dinner like nothing had changed. But inside, something had cracked open. Something cold. Something dangerous. And that night, when Nick fell asleep on the couch watching football, I sat in the dark and stared at him. This man. This stranger. This liar. And I realized something that made my blood run colder than any winter wind. If Nick had been hiding an affair for a whole year, then I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore. I was fighting for the truth. And the truth was going to burn everything down. Because I wasn't the only one he was lying to. And in less than 48 hours, with everyone watching, I would tear his perfect world apart. The first real crack came from the person I least expected. Our 6-year-old son, Ethan. It was the next afternoon, Thanksgiving Eve, and the house buzzed with last-minute chaos. Nick was outside, wrestling with the giant folding tables we rented for dinner. I was in the kitchen, trying to focus on pumpkin pies and cranberry sauce instead of the growing pit in my stomach. Ethan sat at the counter, coloring a picture of our family. He drew 4 people, me, Nick, himself, and another woman. Blonde hair. Big smile. I froze. "Hey, buddy," I said, forcing my voice to stay light. "Who's that?" He looked up at me like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "That's Miss Liza," he said. "Daddy said we're gonna see her soon." My heart dropped so hard I had to grip the counter to stay upright. Miss Liza. The same name on the card. The woman who had thanked my husband for a year of secret love. I knelt down beside him, the pie crust forgotten on the counter. "Ethan," I said carefully, "when did Daddy tell you about Miss Liza?" He shrugged. "Last weekend. When we went to the park. He said she's really nice and she might come over someday." Last weekend. While I was working late, finishing reports for a promotion I thought would help our family. Nick hadn't just been lying to me. He was already laying the groundwork to bring her into our son's life. A new family. A replacement. I felt something dark coil inside me, hotter than rage, colder than hate. I had spent the past 24 hours questioning myself, wondering if I had misunderstood, if I was crazy, paranoid, unfair. But children don't lie like adults do. They don't spin stories or hide their tracks. Ethan's crayon drawing was the purest truth I had ever seen. I ruffled his hair, kissed his forehead, told him to keep coloring. And then I walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the floor, my whole body shaking. Not from sadness. From clarity. Nick wasn't going to confess. He wasn't going to stop. He had already decided that our life, our son's life, was disposable. And if he thought he could replace me without consequences, he was about to find out exactly how wrong he was. Because tomorrow, at Thanksgiving dinner, I wasn't just going to confront him. I was going to destroy him. Thanksgiving morning didn't feel like a holiday. It felt like the quiet before a battlefield explodes. I woke up early, before the sun rose. Nick was already gone, said he had to pick up the last-minute pies from a bakery across town. He didn't trust me to bake them this year, apparently. Not that it mattered. By tonight, he wouldn't be trusting me with anything ever again. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the blank, empty table. Normally, I'd spend hours decorating, layering pumpkins, candles, little place cards handwritten with everyone's names. This year, I didn't bother. I wasn't setting a table for gratitude. I was setting a table for truth. I made coffee. I fed Ethan breakfast. I texted my sister to confirm what time she was coming. Everything looked normal. On the surface. But inside, I was counting down minutes. Measuring every breath. I had one shot at this. One chance to expose Nick without giving him time to spin lies, make excuses, gaslight me in front of everyone. I couldn't just accuse him. He'd deny it. Smile. Charm his way out of it, like he always did. No. I needed to show everyone exactly who he was. And the only way to do that was to let him bring the lie into our home himself. Which meant I had to bait him. Make him feel comfortable. Make him drop his guard. Make him invite her. So I did what every bone in my body screamed against. I called Nick. Put on my sweetest voice. "Hey, babe," I said, bright and casual. "Can you make sure to invite anyone you think should be here tonight? It's Thanksgiving. The more the merrier." There was a pause on the other end. A hesitation so small most people wouldn't have noticed. But I heard it. I knew him too well. "You sure?" he said. "You already have so much going on." "I'm sure," I chirped. I wanted to be special. Another pause. Then, "Okay. I'll see what I can do." We hung up. And I stood there, gripping the phone, feeling like I had just lit the match that would burn down my life. But it had to be this way. He had to bring her. He had to make it real in front of everyone. Because only then would they see what I saw. Only then would there be no way to pretend. No way to lie. And when the truth hit, it would hit him harder than anything he ever expected. Because when he walked through that door tonight, he wasn't going to be alone. He was going to bring her. Right into my house. Right into my trap. By late afternoon, the house was full. The smell of turkey and stuffing wrapped around everyone like a blanket. Laughter spilled from the living room, where my parents, Nick's family, and a few friends were catching up over beers and wine. The clinking of glasses. The clatter of serving spoons. The illusion of happiness. All of it felt unreal, like I was standing behind a sheet of glass, watching someone else's life play out. I kept moving, setting dishes, refilling drinks, smiling until my cheeks ached, waiting. Every time the doorbell rang, a jolt of adrenaline shot through me. But it was just another cousin, another neighbor dropping by with a pie. Nick was everywhere, laughing, clapping backs, making jokes, the perfect host, the perfect liar. At 5:37 p.m., the doorbell rang again. I froze halfway through carving the turkey. Nick called out from the living room. I got it. I wiped my hands on a towel and stepped quietly into the hallway, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I watched from the corner as he opened the door. And there she was, blonde, tall, smiling like she belonged here, like she had every right to step over the threshold of the life I had built. Nick's voice dropped low as he greeted her, too low for anyone else to hear. But I heard. Hey, you made it, he said. And the way he looked at her, soft, familiar, private, was the final confirmation I didn't know I still needed. She held a bottle of wine and a covered dish like any other guest, like family. He ushered her inside without missing a beat. Introduced her casually. This is Liza, a friend from work. Friend. The word curdled in my stomach. I watched as he led her into the living room, where my parents sat, where Ethan played with his cousins, where the life we had built together stood, still unaware of the rot that was eating it from the inside. Liza smiled at everyone, charmed them, chatted easily about traffic and recipes and holiday plans, as if she hadn't spent the last year dismantling my marriage in secret, as if she weren't sitting in my house, at my table, pretending to be something she wasn't. I forced myself to breathe, to move. I carried the turkey into the dining room, smiled when people complimented the decorations, answered questions about work and Ethan's school like nothing was wrong, because I needed a little more time. One wrong move, one extra word, and Nick would have smelled blood. He would have realized that something was wrong. And then the perfect trap I had built would have collapsed before I had a chance to snap it shut. I wanted to scream, to throw the truth in his face, but that would have given him a chance to lie, to twist everything, to make me look crazy. No, I needed composure, control, so that everyone would see everything for themselves. Dinner was supposed to start at 6. By 6:15, the table was full, turkey steaming in the center, bowls of mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, stuffing, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce. Everyone took their seats, smiling and laughing, clinking glasses in a perfect imitation of a happy holiday. I sat at the head of the table, Ethan beside me. Nick sat across from me, carving the turkey, cracking jokes, pretending nothing in the world was wrong. And Liza. Liza sat 2 seats down from Nick, next to my sister, smiling, laughing, slipping into the folds of our family like she belonged there. I watched her carefully, noting every little move, the way she leaned toward Nick when he spoke, the private glances she thought no one would notice, the flash of something territorial when I refilled Nick's wine glass without a word. The room buzzed with small talk, work updates, funny travel stories, plans for Christmas. It would have been easy to miss it if I hadn't been listening for it. It happened when my sister complimented Liza's bracelet, a delicate silver thing with tiny charms. Thanks, Liza said brightly. Nick gave it to me. Silence. Sharp. Immediate. Like the whole room inhaled at once and forgot how to breathe. Liza's smile froze on her face. Nick's hand jerked, slashing the turkey breast too hard. I watched him look up at her, panic flickering behind his eyes. And in that moment, that tiny slip, that stupid little brag, the entire mask cracked. The room shifted. I saw it in my sister's eyes first, confusion. Then in my mother's furrowed brow. Then in the way my father set down his fork a little too carefully. They didn't understand everything yet, but they felt it. The tension. The wrongness. It rippled out from Nick and Liza like a poison cloud. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. I just sat there, folding my napkin slowly in my lap, while Nick scrambled to fix it. She means, it was a gift for a project we worked on together. He laughed awkwardly, voice too loud, too fake. Liza nodded quickly, face flushed. Yeah. From the team, she added. Everyone chipped in. No one believed them. Not really. A crack had opened, and I could see the doubt seeping into the room, thick and unstoppable. People exchanged glances, shifted in their seats. suddenly very interested in their mashed potatoes. Nick caught my eye across the table, desperate, pleading. I smiled. Sweet, polite, deadly, because the first thread had been pulled. And soon, the whole thing would unravel. And I was going to make sure I was the one holding the knife. The energy around the table had changed. Gone was the easy laughter, the relaxed smiles. In its place, tight voices, careful glances, the heavy, invisible weight of something everyone felt, but no one dared to name. Nick tried to keep the conversation moving, asking about travel plans, work, weather. But the cracks were there now, and they were spreading. I sat back, letting it unfold. I didn't have to say a word. People notice things when you stop filling the silence for them. They notice how Nick's hand brushed Liza's when he passed her the butter, how she leaned a little too close when he spoke, how Nick laughed just a little too hard at her jokes no one else found funny. And then it happened. The first question. My sister, God bless her bluntness, tilted her head slightly and said, half joking, "So how long have you two been, working together?" Her voice was casual, but her eyes were sharp. Nick stiffened. Only for a second, but I saw it. Liza, too. She fumbled her fork. It clattered onto her plate, splashing gravy onto the tablecloth. "Oh, almost a year," she said too brightly, dabbing at the mess with a napkin. "Almost a year. The same timeline as the love letter I found." Nick laughed, a brittle, forced sound. "Yeah, crazy, huh? Time flies." I watched my parents exchange a look. Watched Nick's father shift uncomfortably in his seat. Watched my sister's smile tighten by just a fraction. They were piecing it together. They didn't have the full picture yet, but they knew something was wrong. They could smell it. I sipped my wine, slow and calm. Inside, my heart pounded with a terrible, thrilling certainty. The dam was about to break. All it needed was a little more pressure, and I was ready to apply it. I set my glass down and smiled at Liza, warm and sweet. "Almost a year, huh?" I said lightly, voice carrying just enough for everyone to hear. "Funny. Nick told me he was working with a completely different team this year." Silence. Nick's face drained of color. Liza's mouth opened, closed, opened again, no sound coming out. Around the table, you could feel the air sharpen. Something was happening. Something undeniable. And I wasn't done yet, because I had one more question to ask. One that would leave no room for lies. One that would set the whole table on fire. The silence after my last comment lingered longer than any silence should at a family dinner. Nick fumbled for control, forcing a laugh that fell flat in the heavy air. I watched him. I watched Liza. I watched the way her hand twitched toward her bracelet, the way her eyes darted to the door like she was already planning her escape route. Good. They were ready to break. I waited until Nick handed Ethan a second helping of mashed potatoes, pretending everything was fine. And then, sweetly, warmly, I struck. "So, Liza," I said, cutting a piece of turkey and placing it delicately on my plate, "where exactly did you and Nick work together?" "You know, before he switched firms 6 months ago." Dead silence. Nick's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Liza blinked. Once. Twice. Around the table, you could almost hear the click of people's heads turning, focusing, sensing blood in the water. Because if Nick had switched firms 6 months ago, and if Liza and Nick had only worked together for almost a year, then something didn't add up. At all. Liza opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I sipped my wine and waited. Nick jumped in too fast, too loud. "We still collaborate sometimes," he said. "Consulting. You know. Remote work." He was sweating. Actually sweating. Little beads glistening on his forehead, above the collar of his carefully ironed shirt. Liza nodded, too eagerly. "Yeah. We email a lot." The lie was so clumsy, so desperate, that the whole table practically recoiled. You could feel it, the moment the room shifted. The moment everyone realized, this wasn't just awkwardness. This was betrayal. And it wasn't hidden anymore. It was sitting at the table with us, wearing a silver bracelet, pretending everything was fine. Nick cleared his throat, picked up his glass with shaking hands. I leaned back in my chair, calm, composed. The trap had been sprung, and now it was just a matter of time. I caught my sister's eye across the table. The look she gave me said it all. "You knew." I smiled slightly. Because yes, I knew. And soon, everyone else would too. Because the next move I had planned wasn't subtle. It wasn't quiet. It was going to rip the last shreds of their lie wide open. And it started with the gift Liza was still wearing on her wrist. I waited until dessert. Until the pie was served. Until the coffee was poured. Until the tension in the room tightened to a point just shy of snapping. Nick was doing everything he could to act normal. Joking. Smiling. Pouring refills. But his hands trembled when he thought no one was looking. Liza barely touched her plate. She kept glancing at Nick for cues, how to sit, when to laugh, what to say. She was falling apart quietly, and Nick was too busy patching holes to notice. Perfect. I picked up my coffee cup, taking a small, careful sip. Then I looked across the table, directly at Liza. That bracelet, I said lightly, smiling, as if we were just two women chatting at brunch. It's so pretty. Nick really does have good taste, doesn't he? Dead silence. Liza's hand froze halfway to her fork. Nick's jaw clenched so hard I thought I heard his teeth grind. Around the table, I could feel it, the way everyone leaned in a fraction of an inch. The way the words Nick gave it to me still echoed in their heads. Liza stammered. Oh, it was, a group gift, like we said. I nodded, playing along. Of course. From the whole team. Right, Nick? Nick swallowed hard. Yeah, he said hoarsely. The whole team. I tilted my head slightly, like I was thinking. Confused. Including Jeremy. I asked, naming Nick's boss. And Karen? And Lisa? They all chipped in. Liza looked at Nick, panicked. Nick nodded stiffly. Sure. Everyone. I gave a small, sympathetic smile. That's funny, I said, voice still light, because I had lunch with Karen last week. She told me you left the company months ago, Liza. The room froze. Liza's mouth fell open. Nick paled. The air crackled. No laughter, no forks scraping plates, just a heavy, brutal silence. I set my cup down gently. And Jeremy? I added, twisting the knife with surgical precision. He's been on medical leave since August. Car accident. Couldn't have signed any cards or pitched in for anything. Every eye at the table turned to Nick and Liza. Nick's father stared at him, stone-faced. My mother's hands tightened around her coffee cup until her knuckles went white. No one said a word, because there was nothing left to say. The web had unraveled completely. The bracelet, meant to be a secret gift of love, now glittered like a spotlight on their lie. Nick opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I didn't rush him. I let him drown in it. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every single person at this table who deserved to know the truth. Nick finally spoke, voice cracking. Sarah, please, can we just... I stood up. Slowly. Deliberately. I picked up my napkin, folded it, and placed it carefully beside my empty plate. Because I wasn't about to argue. I wasn't about to cry. I was about to show them exactly who he really was. In a way no one at this table would ever forget. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I simply stood there, in front of the family I had once thought was mine, and told the truth. Liza, I said, calm and clear, why don't you tell everyone when Nick gave you that bracelet? Her face turned sheet white. Nick choked out, Sarah, please. But it was too late. Everyone was watching now. Everyone was listening. Liza's hand trembled on the table. She looked to Nick for help, but he had nothing left to give. I turned to the rest of the table, my voice steady. It wasn't a team gift. It wasn't a celebration. It was a private gift from my husband to the woman he's been seeing behind my back for the past year. Someone gasped. My mother covered her mouth with both hands. Nick's father's face hardened like stone. I didn't stop. And while I was home taking care of Ethan, while I was planning holidays, working late, believing in this marriage, I pointed at Nick. He was planning a future without me. Nick finally broke. Sarah, we can talk about this later. Please, not here, not like this. I laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. Not here. I repeated. You brought her here, Nick. You sat her at my table. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I looked at Liza. I hoped the bracelet was worth it. Then I turned to everyone else, my parents, his parents, my friends, all the people who had gathered to celebrate family, trust, love. The truth is, I said, I didn't lose a husband tonight. I lost an illusion. The room was dead silent. No one touched their pie. No one moved. Nick sat there, frozen, looking smaller by the second. Liza wiped a tear from her cheek, trying to shrink into her chair. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I simply sat there, calm and certain, as Nick and Liza left. Without fanfare. Without apology. And when the door closed behind them, I reached for the basket of rolls, passed one to Ethan, and smiled. Dinner continued. Without them. Just as it should. Have you ever had to smile through heartbreak, just to uncover the truth? Write your story in the comments. Subscribe, more untold stories are on the way.